Coming up, how would the absence of Kylian Mbappe factor into France's performance against the Netherlands? Poland becomes the first team ousted from the Euros following a solid second-half performance orchestrated by Austria. And Copa America is officially underway. We size up our predictions for the tournament on this edition of Scoreline. And with that said, we welcome you inside our Golazo Network studios for this edition of Scoreline presented by Geico. It's easy to Geico. Alongside Chris Whittingham, I am John Brickley, and we talk about one nation in particular, Whitty, that being France, one of the favorites to come away winners of the European Championship, and without Mbappe, a broken nose that he suffered versus Austria heading into this matchup against the Netherlands. The most recent result without Mbappe, a 0-0 draw in a friendly with Canada. But in the 14th minute, France had an opportunity.
Yeah, this is decent interchange. Adrien Rabiot, shoot, man! Shoot with that opportunity. Antoine Griezmann, though, gets it to his feet and kind of scuffs at it with his weaker right foot. In the end, this wouldn't even go down probably as that big of a chance on expected goals, but that's a huge opportunity. France should be 1-0 up.
Griezmann here in the 65th minute. This was another opportunity that we thought France could capitalize on, another missed opportunity.
It's a great idea from N'Golo Kante. Rather than shooting to squeeze it into that window, it takes a couple of bounces. It's very difficult for Griezmann to control. In the end, kind of scuffs at it, and it goes wide. This, though, the best chance for the Netherlands. Xavi Simons putting it into the back of the net, but it's determined that Denzel Dumfries is interfering with Mike Magnan's ability to get to this ball. The correct decision, in my view, after a long review, confirmed on VAR as offside, and so we finish 0-0.
Okay, so the Netherlands can guarantee a knockout round spot with a win versus Austria. Meanwhile, France can guarantee a knockout stage appearance with a win versus Poland. Here is how France has factored in when their star and Kylian Mbappe has not started on the pitch. And you see most recently the draw versus Canada before the draw on this day against the Netherlands. But overall, 5 draws and 2 defeats when Mbappe doesn't start. That was a looming issue for France coming into this match. How did that factor in the overall performance by his fellow countrymen?
For me, it was more interesting the way that Deschamps decided to adjust without him. The fact that, first off, he was sat on the bench. It looked like, oh, he might be a looming threat in the game. But you look at the personnel change that he decides to make. It's not to bring in another attacker. It's to bring in another midfielder, in Aurélien Tchouameni, into that midfield. It's about the solidity of the team first and foremost. And you saw that particularly in that second half. France certainly dominated. But the biggest thing is that defensive structure. You have 3 midfielders in Kante, Rabiot, and Tchouameni who are very capable defensively. You have very good back pressers in Dembele and Thuram. Koundé is more of a solid option at right back as opposed to attacking option. They don't want to go for Jonathan Klaus in that right back position because Koundé brings solidity. Deschamps prefers and spotlights solidity defensively more than anything else. I think if he brought in Giroud to partner with Thuram and you have Griezmann and Dembele playing off the wide positions, they maybe could have done more in the attack, but you can see at times the preference for this team is to be defensively solid. They know they're getting through a tournament. It's not about being the most spectacular team, although I personally think that France could be the best team in the world, play the best football in the world. They choose not to do that because they prefer getting results. And so, yes, could they have been more spectacular today with Mbappe? Could they have been more spectacular if they had made different personnel changes? For sure. I personally do not think that Mbappe is a make or break player for France because I think they're that good, but I do think they have that. It's a moments team. They have that little bit less of individual quality, individual moments providers when he's not on the pitch.
You see the numbers there, 47 goals, 28 assists in 80 appearances. Overall, from the match stats perspective, a sizable advantage for France when it came to possession and shots. They did go -1 in terms of shots on target. But I think one of the looming questions, if you will, for France moving forward in this tournament is, do you need to rush Mbappe to come back?
I don't think so. They're probably already qualified for the next stage with 4 points. They probably won't finish as a third-place team. I'd be really surprised if Austria went and beat the Netherlands. And you can't see a scenario in which the French are finishing third in this group. And so I do think that the bracket, the way that it shapes out, we were going through it earlier. They can maybe play Turkey. They can maybe play Ukraine. I don't think you're worrying about the round of 16. You're worrying about the path to the final. And the path to the final, it's way more important that Mbappe is fully healthy. So the fact that he didn't play today, to me, suggests they're taking a little bit more of a long-termist view with making sure that for the future of this French team, that he will be fine. I would be really surprised if he plays this third group stage game against Poland. You would be shocked if France are unable to get a win in that game against Poland and not top this group if Mbappe doesn't play in this game. I would be stunned. And so I think they have to be thinking about the knockout stages with him and not about pressing him back into action. I thought tonight demonstrated that intelligence with making sure that we're thinking about his long-term rather than his near-term.
Look at it from the perspective of the Netherlands now. With that result, one loss in their last 18 major tournament matches. This is a team that, in terms of the odds, plus 1,500 to win Euros, but overall they were much more aggressive late in that second half that we saw against the French defensive unit. But more so, where do you see the Netherlands in terms of their path moving forward?
Yeah, I think they have a lot of really good pieces. But I think today you saw their inability to create. You look at a player like Jeremy Frimpong, for instance, who's brought in to, I think, along with Denzel Dumfries, unsettle Theo Hernandez down that left side because he loves to get forward so much. But they couldn't really do that because there's so much pace and cover in this French team. It is just that level above. And so I think we haven't seen them at their attacking best because they don't really have their best in midfield. Without Frankie de Jong, without Theo Koopmeiners, without a few other players that I think could create some of that difference in midfield, they just aren't as special. And then up front, they're relying on Memphis Depay to be that man, and I'm not certain that he is at that level to be that kind of solo center forward that's going to create everything for you. Gakpo had his chances. Xavi Simons had his chances. Frimpong had his chances. But then you can see, compared to this French team, and especially N'Golo Kanté, who I thought was amazing on the day and has been brilliant at this tournament, has been a breath of fresh air to see him again because we have missed seeing him play in major games, playing in Saudi Arabia, obviously domestically. He is so good and makes life difficult for the Netherlands attackers. So I think that they are a good side. I don't think they are a brilliant side. They will have to see a lot better play if in the later stages of the tournament, if they are to go on and win this tournament.
Yeah, we also saw the numbers just a moment ago. Ronald Koeman, who's been the manager for this Netherlands team in terms of the prospects moving forward, dealing with those injuries in the midfield, certainly has the capability of guiding this team deep in the tournament. Was also a name, of course, rumored to be in the opening of the Bayern Munich job. Meanwhile, Austria, the team that fell to France in the opening of the group stage, taking on Poland in this Group D matchup. And Austria came out swinging early on in the 9th minute. Trauner here, heading it in, Austria's fastest ever scored goal at the Euros.
Yeah, Mwene does well to get towards that byline, put the cross in, a just reward for Austria's fantastic start. They look like a Red Bull team. They press really hard. They won the ball, but then they give one up, pinging around the penalty area. Well taken there by Krzysztof Piątek, who does well to finish beyond the Austria goalkeeper. Poland had their great period in the latter stages of the first half.
66th minute, Christoph Baumgartner here, scoring in 6 of Austria's last 7 matches. What a performance he has been able to put on. And then the 78th minute, the much-needed insurance goal.
Yeah, it was a good run from Sabitzer in behind to create this penalty. Wojciech Szczesny taking him out. This, by the way, was the first penalty kick of this tournament. Absolutely remarkable, and well put away there by Arnautovic. I love this Austria team coming into the tournament, and they justified every reason why today with the way that they pressed, with the way that they created chances. But you look at the numbers there, it's a very even game. Poland definitely had their period, and that crowd in Berlin, which is absolutely fantastic today, got behind the Poles towards the end of that first half. They probably needed a second if they were to win, because I think on the day and in the overall, Austria is a better team. They have a more defined identity, and it's so difficult to play against.
The magic just wasn't there for Poland. We did see Robert Lewandowski come in, subbed in the 56th minute of the match. Eventually did get a yellow card, but Poland, first team now eliminated from the Euros. 0 points through those first 2 matches, as we saw. Losing 2 Euro matches, by the way, in a row for the first time ever. And on the flip side, you've got Austria here. As you mentioned, certainly the struggles, which was alarming coming into this, was the fact that Austria had not qualified for the World Cup over the last 6 chances, and yet here they are. They can guarantee a spot in the knockout stage with a win over the Netherlands in the final match.
Yeah, and I think even if they lose that game, they have a decent chance. If you look at the table of third-place teams, we'll get to that later on in the show, but I do think that Austria are, of the teams that would be considered the big powers in Europe, certainly in that next group because of the way that they have that identity that I mentioned. And they came out from the start in that 4-4-2, sometimes in the diamond, sometimes 4-2-4, where they just go at you and they make life so difficult. They did it to the French at times. On match day 1, they just couldn't make it tell with creating opportunities. Today they did. You look at that second goal. It's such a classic Red Bull goal. How many times watching Leipzig and Salzburg and New York Red Bulls down the years, it's that bent ball, edge of the area, great bit of skill from Arnautovic to dummy it, and then Baumgartner placing it in the corner. They have an identity, and it's so hard to forge one at national level because of how little time you have on the training ground. Love this Austria team. I think they will get through this group either with a loss or a draw maybe in that next game against the Netherlands, and I think they will cause some team a huge amount of problems in the round of 16.
All right, so we shined the focus there on Group D. What about in Group E? We saw the first match of the day on Friday, that pitting Slovakia versus Ukraine. Ukraine looking to continue their dominance over their counterparts, but in the 17th minute, Slovakia able to strike first.
Yeah, good opportunity towards the back post, and just whiffing at that header there, Zinchenko, well done by Ivan Šranc to nod it across the goalkeeper and get Slovakia in front.
Ukraine, meanwhile, trying to get their first win from behind in a match in the Euros since 2012, got the equalizer in that 54th minute.
Gave up 4 unanswered to start this tournament. Shaparenko doing very well to turn home. And then, this is brilliant. Locked the ball in behind. Look at these two touches. First to control, second to squeeze it through the legs of the goalkeeper from Roman Yaremchuk. That is pure class there. Ukraine getting that second goal, getting the win, and they needed the bounce back from that 3-0 against Romania on the opening day. It'll be interesting to see if Belgium win tomorrow. It's 4 teams on 3 points, and if the favorite wins, which is of course Belgium, this will be all to play for going into that final match day. Probably the most exciting group as it stands right now heading towards match day 3.
Ukraine with their 4th ever Euro win through 12 matches. A come-from-behind win with Chelsea and Lahoud breaking it down for us.
Good comeback after being defeated by Romania. We were able to witness Ukraine in really good form against Slovakia. Man of the match was Shaparenko, not only for his brilliant goal and assistance, but also his movements off the ball. Mike, can you take me through it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been waiting for this moment because a lot of the Ukrainian players that need to step up, they stepped up and then some. It starts with this man right here, Mikhail Mudryk, who starred in Football Must Go On award-winning documentary. He kickstarts it off, and he plays it to the right man, the man of the moment, Artem Dovbek. He is La Liga leading goal scorer, and he does the grown man thing, which is recognizing that he's got a numerical disadvantage. 6 defenders he has to deal with. He says, you know what? I'll be involved. I'll bring it back. Alexander Zinchenko waiting for this, makes the run, and then it's Dovbik again, evolving, reinventing himself. This little run here opens it up for Shaparenko, the man of the moment, to get things started, sweeping this in, and it is a Golazo team sort of football that you want to see to get back in the big match. And now you have a moment like this if you're Ukraine to decide, what are we going to do? Do we sit on our laurels or do we go for it? Go for it every time. Alexander Timchuk, this is your right wing back who gets a start today. He makes the first run, and you want to get your midfielders in half spaces. This is Shaparenko again, and you had a big moment on this.
And how he definitely checks in for that ball and takes that first touch diagonally, sets him up to play this following ball.
Yeah, I love that you say that because good first touches from midfielders creates running lanes and passing lanes for your star strikers. This is Roman Yaremchuk, Valencia, big man there. He has a decision. I'll go over the top, reinvents his run. First touch good, second touch even better. And that is your match-winning moment for a side that needed something to celebrate. We know what's happening off the field, but this is what's happening on the field. And then as we see it again, first touches like this is world-class Chelsea. And it has a domino effect of you take a good first touch, look at his eyes. He now knows that he's got the goalkeeper where he wants him. And if you have the goalkeeper coming on in Martin Dubravka, who was excellent in that first match where they got the result, as we see the ball evolving, as we see the play evolving, keep an eye on the footwork of Martin Dubravka. As we say play, Dubravka's going to come off the line here, and he's frozen. He has to hesitate because the touch is that good. And then Yaremchuk says, hey, game, set, match, game is done.
Now, Mike, you're talking about first touch. Yes, the first touch is really important, but what about timing? Being able to time yourself to take that first touch?
Well, it's what you do as a striker where you're always looking at where's the defender going to go. If I'm Yaremchuk and say, I have you that I'm going to run off your shoulder like this, I don't need to make the obvious run. That's why when we saw it there, he had 2 options because of the excellent first touch from Shaparenko. Now, as Shaparenko takes the second touch, you now have to say, okay, let me hesitate and make a second run where the defender's not going. Because the ball's there and he's played early, then he loops his run yet again, and that ball and the run are met in unison, and the rest is history.
Well, Ukraine ended that match on a really good note. Emotions keep running high on these roller coaster rides for the rest of the Euros.
All right, guys, thank you so much. So Ukraine's going to wrap up the group stage with a matchup against Belgium, but Yaremchuk there with goals in 2 of his last 3 matches. 16th career goal for Ukraine, becoming 4th all-time leading goal scorer for his nation, as Ukraine now seeking back-to-back and 2nd overall knockout round stage appearances if they get the victory coming up. Meanwhile, a nation that is not involved in this year's Euros, Wales, has parted ways with manager Rob Page after 45 matches in charge. Despite leading Wales to their first World Cup in 64 years, the 49-year-old failed to qualify the Dragons for the Euros as they were beaten by Poland in the playoff final. Wales drew a scoreless affair against 203rd-ranked Gibraltar before a 4-0 loss at the hands of Slovakia in Page's final 2 matches in charge earlier in June before his sacking. Wales will open up their UEFA Nations League campaign against Turkey in September under a new manager. Still to come, Guillaume Balaguer will join us to dive into much more the Netherlands and France draw here on Scoreline, presented by Geico. Back with you on Scoreline, presented by Geico. Here are the Friday Euro 2024 results. Group E, we saw Ukraine come from behind, take down Slovakia by a 2-1 final. Also, Austria outlasting Poland in the second half with 2 goals in a 3-1 victory. And in Group D, Netherlands and France to a 0-0 draw. France, of course, playing without Kylian Mbappe out because of that broken nose. Guillaume Balaguer joins us now here on Scoreline. Guillaume, always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. And let's dive deeper into the result that we saw between France and the Netherlands, and the missing key for France, of course, Kylian Mbappe out because of that broken nose. So now it's 5 draws and 2 defeats when Mbappe does not start for France. What say you on the performance that you saw from the French?
First of all, in a competition that's got an average of 3 goals per game, to have a 0-0 draw with so much talent on the pitch was a little bit of a surprise. But then you saw the game and you realize that, yes, both teams tried to attack, but not with a lot of risk. And there was a first half in which Netherlands did it better than France, eventually became a cagey affair. But you're absolutely right. That's the difference, isn't it, between a team that is good, that defends well, that is well structured, with a team that actually wins trophies, and that's with or without Mbappe. Griezmann did all he could. It was Marcus Thuram. Both of them were up front, and Thuram had one of the chances. Dembélé had another one. Griezmann a couple. To be honest, France, especially in the second half, they started attacking better. They managed to get the ball to Dembélé much quicker. And then it became a little bit of a duel. Ake, Dembélé, see who could beat whom. Could the defender take the ball of Dembélé? Could Dembélé ended up shooting? And he did a couple of times. As I said, Griezmann had a couple of opportunities in the first half. And there was a goal disallowed by Xavi Simons that it was rightly disallowed for offside. And then after that point, the last 15, 20 minutes, I think everybody thought, you know what, it's not a bad place to get a draw and to sort it all out in the next game. Netherlands will play Austria and France will play Poland.
And we talked about at times the lack of cutting edge there from France, but we've seen that at tournaments before. They seem to go for a very pragmatic approach under Didier Deschamps. Do you feel like even though they were on the doorstep of winning back-to-back World Cups, we could see more from this French team?
And all we're going to see is what we saw today, a team that will always have 6 players behind the ball, always, and will not risk a lot. If one fullback goes forward, the other one will stay behind. And certainly Kanté, who runs a lot, yes, he does help a little bit offensively, but mostly just close-up gaps. Even Rabiot, who is the kind of midfielder you will expect in that position to actually attack the spaces, get into the box. He did a couple of shots from outside the box, but that was it. And Tchouaméni was really much deeper than you see in this graphic. So that's France. And they hope that a little bit of talent up front takes them to the next round. And it will, because, of course, now they play a Poland side that haven't got any point whatsoever. I do believe that even though it's important to get points against Poland, I don't think Dembele will play. It was a bit of a gimmick, I've got the impression, this having him on the bench. If he was available, if he was needed, you think he would have played? If it was the World Cup final, the European Championship final, maybe yes. At this stage, I think he will do well with saving himself for this game and perhaps even for the next one. It takes about 10 days to recover from the injury, from the broken nose, even if you have a mask. But he was available in case he was needed. He wasn't. Against Poland, a win will be enough for France to go top of the group, as we all expect.
So outside of France, one of the big storylines has been the performance of Spain. What we saw against Croatia with a 3-0 advantage, and then, of course, the victory over the defending champions in Italy, which could have easily been a 5-0 scoreline if you take a look at the opportunities that Spain had. What's the likelihood that right now this Spain club, even though they are young, could potentially be the odds-on favorite to come away with the Euros championship?
Wait! We just beat Croatia and Italy. Still early for all that. Wait, we haven't even passed the last 16. Okay, we are in the last 16 now as group winners, and of course the next game against Albania will play by Spain B, if you like. Still very good players. But what I saw last night in the stadium was extraordinary. Against Italy, it's never easy, never ever easy. They're very, very competitive. And yet, Spain managed to attack in so many different ways on the right-hand side, especially on the left-hand side, with a Nico Williams that was outstanding. Morata just kept fixing the centre-backs. Fabian stole 6 times possession in Italy's half, and that's a record in the Euros. Pedri, with shoots, but also assisting, created a lot of havoc. Really was brilliant. Cucurella as well. You can go one by one. Everyone in Spain is in their best version. But the most important thing for Spain is 2, I would say. 1, everybody thinks the same way. They know what has to happen. When they come into the pitch, they've got a picture of the game. And 2, have you seen them trying to recover possession? Nobody in the whole European Championships do that. And they do it constantly. There was intensity, intention and intensity, and constant intention and intensity throughout the game. For the first 70 minutes with the first 11, and then with the substitutes, they did exactly the same. Not easy to beat Spain. And okay, against Croatia, we conceded about 16 shots on goal. You think we're going to have to adjust that. It was only 4 against Italy. So, yes, okay, put it in the brackets of favourites, but we haven't won it yet.
I want you to get carried away, Guillaume. You're going to win the Euros. Wanted to ask you, though, about Nico Williams, because you mentioned him there. Incredible story. Brother Iñaki plays for Ghana. They're both brilliant for Athletic Club del Bilbao. Can you just kind of walk us through his football trajectory? Because it was a big job on him to be that left winger for the Spanish national team, and he absolutely had Di Lorenzo on toast yesterday.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, a year ago against Georgia in the qualifiers, Marco Asensio and Dani Olmo were the wingers of Spain, and both of them got injured. So Luis de la Fuente thought, okay, who I've got? I've got Lamine Yamal and I've got Nico Williams. And since then, they have been the wingers of the national side. Lamine was brilliant in the first game. Nico Williams, you just described it, he was absolutely brilliant. Everything he tried went. These are 2 players, 121 in Nico and 16 Lamine, that will have to score to actually jump to the next level. But in any case, it didn't happen on this occasion. It may happen in others. A lot of what happens with Spain have to do with their sharpness and their brilliance. I don't think they have replacements. Dani Olmo could play, but he comes inside a lot. To be all, typical wingers and to stretch the defenses as much, you have to have those 2 players, and it's brilliant that Spain do that. But the story of Nico Williams, very, very quickly, if you want, the parents, Felix and Maria, were born in Ghana, and they spent all the savings to get out of Ghana. They wanted to go to Europe, to the United Kingdom, and they paid a trafficking gang all the money they had. Halfway through that journey, they were actually stranded, left away from the van went, and many people were left behind. So they had to cross the Sahara Desert to get to Spain, and the shoes were basically wasted. So they work with the feet, and Felix has got no sensitivity in the feet. It doesn't work well because of that. Eventually made it to Melilla, which is a colony of Spain. They were arrested. They were told, you have to lie. You have to say that you are from a war-affected country like Liberia. They did that. That allowed them to walk into Spain. And in there, they made friends. And eventually, they settled in the north of Spain. In that journey, Maria was pregnant of Iñaki Williams. And in that journey, they had to bury many friends. So Nico, I spoke to him after the game, and I said, who were the first people that you spoke to? He says, well, I look at the phone, it was my brother. And this game is an homage, this win is an homage to my brother and to all the Williams. I hope the family enjoy themselves. They never forget Nico, Iñaki, where they come from, and what the parents did for them to be where they are now.
That's a beautiful story, and I appreciate you telling it. Let's talk a little bit more about the other teams in the competition. We have 2 match days complete in groups A through D, and that picture is starting to take place, particularly of those third-place teams that are going to be battling it out on the final day of the Euros. Who may be of the teams that are currently there? You look at Scotland, you look at Albania, who's currently in that spot, Slovenia, and Austria, those teams that are right now sat in those third-place spots.
It is Austria out of those ones, and of course Slovakia after the win in the first game, that gives them a chance. But out of those sides, I feel that Austria, Czechia as well, have got a very well-structured side. And I think we still haven't seen the last of both of them. The rest, Scotland have been disappointing. You have to see a better Scotland, and they've given themselves a chance as well with the point they've got. And Albania, they've got such a difficult group, of course. But they play in Spain, the B version of Spain, with nothing to play for them. So there's still a lot to decide on those. But I do feel that out of that group, if you had to choose one, Austria have got everything it takes to go to the next round.
Guillaume Balaguer with the very latest on Euro 2024 as we're starting to see the number of teams shrink down to the round of 16. Guillaume, thanks for joining us here on Scoreline.
Cheers. Talk to you soon.
All right, let's get to some news and notes as well from around the club football news standpoint in the Italian Serie A. Coaching carousel continues as Torino has announced Paolo Vanoli as their new manager for the next 2 seasons after leading Venezia to promotion. The 51-year-old Italian technician will take over a Torino side that finished mid-table in 3 consecutive seasons under Ivan Juric, who announced he would leave the club after his contract expired. Torino is the 10th Serie A team to formally announce a new manager ahead of next season, with at least 3 more clubs still looking to fill that role. Argentina set the tone for a title defense in Copa America. When we return on Scoreline, presented by Geico, Jenny Chu joins us to discuss the rest of the tournament, including the showdown between Mexico and Jamaica.
Nicholson! Jamaica have a lifeline. Whipped in towards that back post. It's Alvarez again, and this time Mexico find the breakthrough. Stepping over and trying to strike it up. There's your absolute beauty. A moment of brilliance. What a strike here from Lembikisa. Into Quiñones, trying to cut inside. Julian Quiñones! It is the first Mexico goal for Julian Quiñones. Locked it to the back post, and the opportunity is on, and the opening goal is scored. Gregory Lee arrived on the back post. Direct ball is in, and on the chip, Orbelín Pineda. That is spectacular. With the backflip to celebrate.
I know that voice. Hey, we'll see Mexico and Jamaica open up Copa America in Houston. Mexico coming in having reached the Copa America final twice, back in '93 and most recently in 2001. Meanwhile, Jamaica will look for their first win in the tournament in their nation's history. As we are back with you on Scoreline, presented by Geico, Jenny Chu joins us now to break down this matchup on the horizon between Mexico and Jamaica. Jenny, great to see you here on the program. And as we've mentioned twice before, Mexico runners-up in this tournament. It's been a rocky road for this team to get to this point, but what would a strong showing do in terms of positive vibes and changing the perception moving forward for Mexico?
Oh, John, I think you're absolutely right. Thank you for having me right now. A good performance from Mexico is going to be incredibly important, considering how much things have been in flux for them, right? They brought in a new federation. They brought in a lot of new ideas. One of those things being a meeting that they just kicked off about the new rules of Liga MX that they are going to implement. So these are all fresh off of the press because of the new federation that has come in to take over. And yes, this is a Mexican national team that a lot of fans have kind of given up on. You know, we see the different reporters that are going to these matches saying, we see all of these fans coming to watch Argentina and they are wanting to see them off the bus. And just a year ago, we had that same sentiment around the Mexican national team, and that's not what they're feeling heading into this Copa America. So definitely need to get those fan backs and kind of show the fan base that they are still someone to root for.
Yeah, you look at last summer ahead of the Gold Cup, there was that managerial change, Diego Coca leaving the position after such a short spell in charge. Jimmy Lozano takes over for the start of the Gold Cup, goes and wins the thing, and so he has the chance to keep going. But now, as we're getting ever closer to an also home World Cup for Mexico, how much pressure is Lozano under to get some results and show that they can compete at this home World Cup?
You know, it's so interesting, Chris, because a lot of people talking about this keep saying that from day one, there was pressure on Jimmy Lozano, right? They were always asking for him to be fired, for him to be let go of. And that's what we've seen from the Mexican national team of late. We haven't seen consistency in coaching. We haven't seen consistency in the program that the national team has been in a while. So it's interesting because the players are the ones that back Jimmy Lozano more than anyone else. While there are asking for changes, while there has been, media asking for changes, the federation having issues, whatever it may be, the players stick to Jimmy Lozano wanting him to be the man. There have been different players that spoke out against this, or about this, saying that they think that he is the man. So yes, of course, there is pressure in the sense that Mexico continues to get rid of and start the new plans. The fact that the federation has come in, a new group of people making decisions, yeah, they need to see something from him, or they're going to bring their own guy in, as we've seen in the past.
We saw Lozano there, Jenny, in the last friendly against Brazil go with this 4-3-3 formation. But in terms of the striker position, that's the looming question for Mexico heading into Copa America. Who's the best option for Lozano at that striker position to start in this tournament?
John, it's a good question. You have a few options here. You have Memote, who had a good showing against Brazil. This is the player with the fewest caps for the national team. And, well, obviously, Quiñones is also there with very few caps. But when we talk about Memote, he's like so new to the group that you see this energy from him that you don't usually see from the Mexican national team players as of late. So that's what people are kind of loving about Memote. He does score that goal against Brazil as well. But then when we talk about Quiñones, this is a most recently naturalized player. He's Colombian. In October, he was naturalized. Chris Whittingham, I know you know the story, but for him, he has 5 appearances and 2 goals since October. So this is a player that has shown that he can score goals. But when you're going to talk about that number 9 position, Santi Giménez, the way that he has played in the Eredivisie for Feyenoord, 23 goals and 30 appearances, shows that he can do that. Can he do it for the Mexican national team is the next question. I think that he would start there as the number 1, number 9. But if that's not the case, Memote and Julián Quiñones are there to kind of take his spot and push him to be better, because that's something where you now have some options up front. You didn't bring in Raúl Jiménez, someone who we have known to be the striker for the Mexican national team for so many years. You see that cycle has ended in different positions as well. Memo Ochoa, who was known to be the goalkeeper since I was a young girl, so that's what, over 10 years, over 15 years, he has been the starting goalkeeper. And you talk about the different positions or the different options that you have now. Memo Ochoa isn't one of them. You have Julio González, you have Carlos Acevedo, you have Raúl Rangel, all of them not with many performances for this Mexican national team. They haven't been able to show up many times because it's always been Memo Ochoa as of late. So I think it's going to be Julio González in that position as well. He has the most experience lately. Raúl Rangel only having 1 appearance with the national team. So there's a lot of question marks because there is, almost like a turning of the guard when you talk about Irving Lozano, who was such a big part of this team, not being called in. No Memo Ochoa, no Raúl Jiménez, no Henry Martin. So there are changes being made here. And what do we see of the newer players? Can they bring that fire, and can they bring what Mexico has been expecting to see from them?
Yeah, there's some of those players that are just part of the furniture of international tournaments. Memo Ochoa in goal from Mexico was one of them. It just won't feel the same. But let's talk a little bit about their opponents in their opening game of the tournament, Jamaica. They've gone on this long project of trying to naturalize players from England. They still have a few of them. Leon Bailey is probably the biggest miss in terms of those players. What do you make of Jamaica's prospects?
You know what? For me, the biggest matchup, okay, before we get to Jamaica's prospects here, Chris, is Edson Alvarez against Mikel Antonio. They play together in club ball. We know that in West Ham. But the fact that Edson Alvarez played as a center back in the match against Brazil because there was an injury, and you see that he can play there, right? We're used to seeing him in the midfield and controlling that midfield, being the captain for the Mexican national team. But now dropping into that center back position, we see that he has the ability to do so. If I am Mexico, I'm going to play Edson Alvarez in a position where he is up against Mikel Antonio, because that is their biggest threat on the attacking end, right? So that would help Mexico on that side. But you're asking about Jamaica. For Jamaica, I think that they had a good showing in the Nations League. They came up in 3rd place, and this is kind of giving them confidence going into this tournament. They lost against the United States 3-1 in the semifinal. But if you remember, Chris, Jamaica was leading the game for the majority of the time until we go into the stoppage time and the U.S. gets 3 goals to then go on to the final of Nations League. Otherwise, they would have been in that final because they scored so early in that match. You have a new head coach. We're seeing him there. And it seems like he is, bringing some strength and continuity to this team. And he is the one who said that if Leon Bailey doesn't want to be here with the national team, he doesn't want to be here. We're going to focus on the players that are here. And they have plenty. They have Bobby Cordova-Reid, Mikel Antonio, Shamar Nicholson up top. Those 3 are going to bring trouble. And so for that, I bring Edson Alvarez into the back line again in the way that he played against Brazil, knowing that that's an option.
Yes, U.S. fans remember all too well that semifinal matchup versus Jamaica, in which the U.S. was narrowly able to escape. We will see Mexico and Jamaica make their debut in Copa America coming up on Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Jenny Chu with the very latest on Copa America joining us here on Scoreline. Jenny, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And when we return, Whitty and I will talk more about Copa America in terms of predictions. My guess is Whitty's going to be right and I'm going to be wrong. More from Scoreline presented by Geico. Back on Scoreline, presented by Geico, a full jam-packed weekend of fixtures in Copa America. We're going to see the action coming up in Group B and in Group C, both available on FS1 and on Fox. United States and Bolivia coming up Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Uruguay and Panama rounding things out 9 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. And that gives us the opportunity for Whitty and I to break everything down in terms of predictions for Copa America, everything from the winner all the way down who's going to be knocked out in the group. And let's start with the U.S. men's national team. And here's what I feel.
This is a big one. And you got this one.
This is a big one. To me, I think they're going to finish second in the group behind Uruguay, who, again, you and I have debated this off camera before. There's no way, in my opinion, that Uruguay's a dark horse, even though the odds are at plus 550. But I thought that the showing against Brazil was much more positive heading into Copa America. Greg Berhalter knows the pressure that's on his shoulders. To me, this is an ideal situation for the U.S. men to play strong in group play, get out of it, and get to the quarterfinals.
But the question will be, what then? Because, yes, I agree with you. You look at the group, they should be finishing at least second against Uruguay. It would be curious to see what the positions are, because that's the match day 3 game if both teams are going for it. But either way, you get to the quarterfinal, you play Brazil or you play Colombia. You just played them in friendlies. The question will be, can Greg Berhalter get that signature win? If they go in a group and they do their job in the group stage and they lose to Colombia or Brazil, that's another major tournament gone by without that big win for Greg Berhalter. This comes down to, for me, that quarterfinal. Can you finally prove that you can deliver on the big stage? Because ultimately, that is what this U.S. team will be judged upon, and it comes from the quarterfinal of this tournament, presuming they even get there. They obviously have to get to that stage first. But that is the big standard by which they'll be measured.
We need a yearning for the World Cup. We can't have a bitter, sour taste in our mouth going into the World Cup. But again, I don't think what we're going to see against Colombia is going to translate exactly into what we're going to see in Copa America. I think
they'll be better than that.
The showing is going to be much stronger for the United States.
All right, let's go to Uruguay now, which is my prediction. I have picked them to be my winner of the tournament.
Ooh.
I'm going all the way. Move that meter all the way to the left. I'm saying they're going to win it all. And I understand they have a murderer's row to go through in order to get there. They've got to get through that side of the bracket, which has Colombia, Brazil, and the United States. But this has been the form team in South American World Cup qualifying. Marcelo Bielsa, for me, is by some distance the best manager in the tournament. He has that team playing to that identity. They have a generation of brilliant players coming through. Bielsa has figured out the alchemy of that team. I love this Uruguay side. And I know that the easiest pick here is Argentina. We'll get to them in a moment just because of who they have to face. But for me, before we've seen them in this tournament, I absolutely love Uruguay coming into this tournament. I think they're going to win it all.
I agree with you. In terms of the odds, plus 550, they're not a dark horse, as I mentioned before. They could be the surprise. I could see Argentina certainly making the run, but Uruguay is a very strong second pick in terms of who's going to come away winners of Copa America. You mentioned Colombia for a moment, and for me, the meter's got to make it all the way to the semifinals for a second straight time, because here, go with my logic. There's a path there where Colombia faces the U.S. in the quarterfinals and advances. Now, go back to that convincing 5-1 win in the friendly. They are the hottest team entering this tournament. 23 unbeaten match streak. 18 of those are wins. To me, Lorenzo has built a team that's lethal on the counterattack, certainly solid when it comes in possession of the football. Fourth best odds. To me, I think Colombia makes it to the semifinals.
Yeah, and that's a big shout. And obviously, like we said, there's a chance. Well, if they finish second in the group, there's a chance they face Uruguay in the next stage, presuming that Uruguay win their group. So they will have a difficult game in the quarterfinal. But like you said, they are equipped right now to take that on. They've got a really good balance of a team. I really like that forward line. Obviously, Luis Diaz playing in off that left. But what we saw in Washington, D.C. or in Landover, Maryland against the United States was super impressive. So you definitely have to give them a genuine shot to make a deep run.
All right, what about the X factor here in terms of Brazil? They won it back in 2019. Where do you see the meter stopping for the Brazilians?
Well, if I'm going to pick Uruguay to win it all, that means I got to pick Brazil to finish as semifinalists. And I think the foundational issues that they have, literally their foundation, I think are going to slow them down here, because I don't love Dorival Jr. as the manager of this team.
Really?
And I think they need to either go back to Chichi or go and bring that top level manager, because I don't think he has forged a very good identity. I think we saw a lot of the holes in this team in the two friendlies against Mexico and the United States. They weren't brilliant in that Mexico game. They got a late winner. They weren't brilliant in that USA game. They created chances. They probably should have won on the day, but they allowed the U.S. to play right through them. Defensively, they were a sieve. And so I think there are enough issues for me with the management of the team where I don't believe in them. I don't think this is even necessarily a Neymar thing. I think this is a team structure thing. Yes, they still have a fantastic forward line. We'll see Endrick play in this tournament for Brazil. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But I think Uruguay are better than them right now. I think they'll beat them in the semifinal.
I'm with you in terms of Brazil's Dorival Jr. What's there to prove, right? What's the plan? I think that's the biggest question for Brazil. Ronaldinho's comments, though, I think could be almost the dark
horse,
even though
they're part of a publicity stunt?
Yeah, I think perhaps it could be a little bit of a motivation for the likes of Endrick, Vinny Jr., Rafinha came out, certainly countering that. And then you've got Argentina. We saw them on display, the defending champs, and for rightfully so, after a 2-0 victory against Jesse Marsh in Canada. To me, it's the easy pick, it's the safe pick, but I've got them winning it all. And we talked about this on Scoreline on Thursday. The striker controversy. Julian Alvarez scoring, Lautaro Martinez scoring as well. Messi's not getting any younger, but I think there's enough talent surrounding him that they have the opportunity to go back-to-back, which would be incredible to make it 3 major tournaments in a row.
Yeah, we'll get to the situation with the pitch in a moment, but I do think that in that game, you saw a lot of the qualities of Argentina. Messi should have scored 2, and realistically, they had the chances to put 3 and 4 past Canada. This is still the class of the region, and I agree with you. This is probably the safest pick, because I went for Uruguay earlier. They have 3 difficult opponents that they could potentially face on their way to the final. Argentina, in my mind, have 0. I think Ecuador or Venezuela is probably the toughest team they'll face on their way to the final. In my view, they're already in Miami for the final. And the question is, who are they going to play? And if you have a team that's all the way in that position, you have to imagine they have a very good chance to go on and win it.
All right, so Argentina also, though, making some news afterwards following that 2-0 victory over Canada, primarily on the playing conditions at Mercedes-Benz pitch. And we saw that they were not impressed, in fact, with the field conditions, as a natural grass surface was installed over a synthetic playing field that's normally home to Atlanta United, along with the Falcons of the NFL. Manager Scoreline came out criticizing the poor planning, saying in part that the game was like that of Saudi Arabia in the World Cup, except that one had a good pitch. You had Martinez, the goalie, coming out saying the state of the pitch was a disaster, very bumpy. Here's the full statement on the pitch conditions against Canada. What do you make of the argument by the Argentinian players?
Yeah, he was saying better that we won, or else it would have been seen as an excuse, but they were going to come out and say this anyway. And this is something that quite frankly, I'm pretty afraid of for this tournament. I was reading today about the situation in Dallas. They've had the pitch down since June the 4th, I believe, so hopefully it'll be a little bit better for the Copa America game on Friday night. But at the same time, I think this is a genuine concern. He called Emiliano Martinez, calling it a disaster. And he said that Copa America will always appear at a lower level than the Euros because of situations like this. I will say, the England game against Denmark, the pitch was terrible, so that definitely comes into play. But at the same time, I do think that this is a real concern, particularly for indoor venues in the U.S. ahead of the World Cup. This cannot be a problem. This has to get sorted, and we've seen this a number of times when they play friendlies, when they play international tournaments, where they lay the grass down over the fake stuff. This cannot happen. Certainly in this Copa America, but definitely in the World Cup in 2026. You're playing in indoor venues. I understand it's hard to go grass indoors, but get it sorted.
And I will say that the field conditions was secondary in terms of the issues that we saw after the aftermath following Canada and Argentina. That because certainly some issues also on hand for Canada Soccer, which issued a statement that the Federation is aware and deeply disturbed of the online racist abuse towards one of their players, Moise Bombito, after their loss to Argentina on Thursday. The 24-year-old tackled Messi around the 80th minute that we saw, but was able to continue assisting on the game's second goal. Bombito responded to the abuse by posting on social media, "My beautiful Canada, no room for that BS." What's your take there, Whitty?
Yeah, obviously a disgrace for anyone who's having a go at Bombito, and you understand that Messi has this enormous fan base and people are going to come to his defense. But CONCACAF putting out a statement as well. We stand with Canada Soccer in condemning these disgraceful social media posts aimed at Moise Bombito. Racism has no place in our sport or in society. It really is just devastating that this keeps happening in these sorts of incidents. It cannot happen anymore. Fans on social media feel like they can say whatever they want to players. It's got to get out of sport. It's got to get out of the society. Horrible, horrible to see that.
It's 2024. We should not be dealing with this anymore. More to come here as we continue on this edition of Scoreline, presented by Geico, available on the Golazo Network.
Sunday, it's the summer of stars as the U.S. hosts the world's best players for Copa America. This is the championship of the Americas. USA versus Bolivia, Sunday on Fox.
Back with you on Scoreline, presented by Geico, as we wrap up the show. Whitty and I, time now to go a little stock up, stock down when we talk about Euro 2024. Let's start with the positivity side of it. Let's go stock up, Whitty.
Yeah, some breakout stars of this tournament. You'll get to one of them that is the leading goal scorer in this tournament. Second leading is Jamal Musiala of Germany. Really brilliant performances. We've seen goals in both of Germany's games of this tournament. And you see the way that you can combine multiple creative players. England can take a lesson. The way that Musiala and Wirtz are combining really well in this tournament. They work so well off of Kai Havertz up front. That team is just humming, and Musiala is leading them. Let's go now to Austria. Christoph Baumgartner, I think, has been, we talked about Austria's success in this tournament so far, had a really, really big chance in the first game for Austria against France to get a goal. France then went down and got the opening goal of the game, but today scores his goal, takes it wonderfully. I think is the leader of that Austrian identity, does such a good job of joining into that forward press and creating chances. You see that celebration there with Ralf Rangnick and what it means. I think he kind of embodies that philosophy out on the pitch. And then N'Golo Kante, mentioned it earlier, what a delight it is to see him again, because we don't get to see him week in, week out anymore. He plays in Saudi Arabia, and I got to be honest, I'm not watching Al Ittihad every week. And so the fact that we get to watch him for this French national team, and he still is that same guy. He's the same guy that won league titles for Chelsea and Champions League for Chelsea, league titles for Leicester. He is so fun to watch in midfield.
All right, so there are your Whitty's Euro stock ups in terms of what we saw so far through the week plus of this tournament. I'm going to stay similar theme in terms of my stock up with Musiala. You mentioned it, 2 goals, 2 shots for Germany in the 2 wins that we saw versus Scotland and versus Hungary. To me, he has brought a different vibe for the host country, trying to come away as champions of Euro, and more so the fact that he's emerging as the new face of the German national team at just 21 years old. He has just been absolutely phenomenal. One of the great stories that we have seen so far in Euro 24 has been Denmark's Christian Eriksen scoring the opening goal against Slovenia 1,100 days since collapsing on the pitch at the Euros 3 years ago in Copenhagen versus Finland, suffered cardiac arrest, was legally pronounced dead, in fact, for 5 minutes. This turns out to be, for me, just one of those moments that's bigger than any match on the pitch. And let's have a little fun with this one. Do you remember, Whitty, where you were when own goal won Golden Boot? As it stands, 5 own goals leading the European Championship right now. The latest that we saw coming in that 1-0 victory for Spain versus Italy. Where were you when the Golden Boot was handed to the own goal?
Yeah, I mean, it's been definitely the big story of this tournament so far. Own goal, top goal scorer ahead of Jamal Musiala. But we got to go a little bit pessimistic here. Got a little bit cynical. Let's get to our stock downs here. And the first one for me, I honestly felt bad for him yesterday. Giovanni Di Lorenzo of Italy was absolutely roasted again and again and again and again by Nico Williams of Spain yesterday. Had a really rough go. I think he needs some help. I'm not certain that in this setup, it's best for him to be playing in a back 4. It might be a back 5 situation, so he has some defensive help, but he was really struggling. Got to go next to Dominik Szoboszlai. You look at the teams that are on 0 points from 2 games, and Hungary is one of them. If they were going to make a run in this tournament, we kind of needed to see a bit more from Dominik Szoboszlai of Liverpool. We haven't really understanding this is a very difficult group to get out of, but when you got 0 points from 2 games, you would expect a little bit better. And this one might be a bit harsh because he comes into the tournament injured, gets his first appearance today off the bench. But Robert Lewandowski, I only bring this up because Poland are now eliminated from the Euros. And so it's another major tournament, unfortunately for him, where he is not able to lift this national team. They've got some decent players around him now, but it's just another tournament that goes by where Robert Lewandowski is one of the great players this generation. He's never really done anything at a major tournament with Poland. And so, yes, it's harsh, but I include him amongst my stock downs.
Okay, so those are your stock downs. Let's go to mine, and I apologize to England because it's just going to be a rough road for you. Harry Kane, yes, Sir Harold of Kane, scored England's lone goal versus Denmark, but he really hasn't made the impact I'm sure fans had envisioned him making. And against Serbia, you may recall just 2 touches in the first half. The English captain's got to step up with the caliber of talent that this England team has at their disposal. Then you've got Phil Foden. Where have you been, Phil? Player of the year in the Premier League, 19 goals scored this season for Manchester City, has 27 in all competitions. But he's been ghosted in the Euros. All 4 of his shots coming versus Denmark. In fact, just 1 shot on target thus far in this tournament. And then lastly, England by far has been the most disappointing story of this tournament. A lot of the blame falls on this man right here, Gareth Southgate, and his tactical philosophy. You've got the experiment, which has not worked out in midfield with Trent Alexander-Arnold. You've got the lack of goal scoring with talent. And then a last noteworthy stat against Denmark. After Kane scored that goal in the first 20 minutes, the last 25 minutes of that first half saw Denmark hold 77% of the possession. They look reserved and lackluster once they had the lead.
Yeah, it's been a massive struggle for them at these Euros. Southgate is taking a ton of criticism, and deservedly so. It just has not been good enough from England in these first 2 group stage games, and yet they're on 4 points. France is on 4 points. It's not the end of the world, but they have to massively turn their performances around if they're going to do anything at these Euros.
My guess is I'm not getting an invitation from the royal family anytime soon. It's been a great Euro 2024. More to come here on the Golazo Network after the break.